right, welcome back to another episode of the Language Lounge. My name is Michelle Ola, and I am the host here today. And I am here with Amy Lenord, and I am very excited to talk to you, Amy, about a whole bunch of things. Like, we have so many things that, as you said, rabbit holes that we might go down on a beautiful Sunday morning. And so I really appreciate you being here. Amy is from Texas, right, Amy? And you've got your Texan accent that I can hear coming out that I just love, that you just can't hide. And you've been teaching Spanish or any other languages, just Spanish for 29 years?
English for a couple of years, or like the first 2 years of my career. So it was English and Spanish. But other than that, that's it.
All right. Otherwise, going on your 25th year teaching. Wow. And so part of what we're going to talk about today is, boy, have things changed, and some things have stayed the same, right? As far as just where we're at. One of the things that there's a tweet that you did that sparked I wanted to talk to you before, and we tried to set some things up, but there's, life, right, happens. But the tweet that you post in the beginning of the year, and it said, "This school year is special. It feels so different, but I am also so different." That was the one where I'm like, ooh, we just have to start this conversation, because it touched a lot of things in me, right? About we're different teachers all the time because we are different people all of the time, right? And we have different students all of the time, not just like they're different, even if you have them year after year. So I really love that idea of our personal and our professional, and how to unite those to be our authentic selves in our teaching and in our life, right? And so I want to kind of talk to you about that. Like, let's start with that. And what were you thinking, and what was happening when you wrote that tweet?
I have to kind of back up a little bit, because if anybody, who follows me has been paying attention, I've gone through a few years of personal life crisis. I've gone through divorce, COVID, and cancer in the same year.
That is amazing.
And wow. I'm not, like trying to dust my, my whatever the cool thing is, because I'm no longer cool.
Me either, so that's okay.
Pop my collar or anything like that. Like, that's a lot. And there's so many things that happen internally inside of me because of all those things going on. Pick one of them. And there were things that I was going to learn, and that I was going to discover about myself, and about, what about teaching did we not learn by virtual instruction?
Right.
I
think everyone has that shared experience, right? Maybe not the other ones, but that crisis of what was happening to the entire world at a specific period of time.
And I'm just going to say it, how much society depends upon what we do for so much more than we ever even realized ourselves. And so that's part of what, just going through that process, even if I'd never gone through the other things at the same time, that alone was a lot. And then I had just come out of a really toxic teaching environment. And any teacher who's gone through a situation where work is not safe. And I'm really talking more about like mentally, emotionally, professionally. That rattled me to my core, and it triggered anxiety. Like, not like, oh, I'm nervous about this. Like, I have anxiety, and it really got the best of me. It caused some health problems to develop. I got out of it, and then the summer that I got out of it, I was the same summer that I separated from my ex-husband. And I don't want to, spend a lot of time bemoaning, my circumstances. I just want to establish some context, because, man, lots of having to sit here in a new place by myself and kind of look at myself and say, okay, time to reevaluate, time to take inventory, time to kind of look at how this personal life of yours that exploded might have bled out, in other ways, in my career and things like that. And I had to, at that time, I was very involved in Texas Foreign Languages Association. I was on the board. I was doing lots of consulting before, the pandemic shut everything down. And just active, and I had to pull away from all of those things because Amy, the person, couldn't. There weren't enough cells in my brain to process everything that was going on and manage it all, and so all that being said, as I got past treatment, because a year later I got my diagnosis, and spent that whole year teaching from home. Every day here by myself. And I think one of the big things that really made me start thinking hard about relationships was teaching online while my kids are watching me lose my hair, watching chemo take its toll on me. And because that all happened, I started chemo in August of that school year. And just deciding not to pretend like nothing was happening, because that's a lot of times what we do and what we're told to do is, don't bring your personal stuff to work, but we're human beings. And if we can't expect children not to bring their baggage to school, how in the world can any of us expect that those personal things aren't impacting how much energy we have to give something, how much grace we have to give to others when we're struggling to give ourselves grace, mercy, when we feel like we need mercy, but we don't get it. It's really hard to find that little extra bit of mercy that matters, that can be transformational in a situation with a student in class. And so I like to think about it this way. I feel like I went through a period of time, a season where I was stripped down to my most raw, like, basic version of myself. And, when you can't get up out of the bed, or when you can't, take yourself to the grocery store and you're just laying there, and it really made me feel like, being a human is hard. Just being a human is hard.
Yeah.
And then you add all these other things, and it just started to soften me in a way, or bring me back to a softness that maybe 20 years or 23 years had built up. And but also coming to terms with not what happened in those hard years, but how it impacted me, how it affected me, and how it was causing me to operate from a place of fear, operate from a place of insecurity. Also, maybe put too much value in the work that I was doing, especially outside of the classroom, because I felt like it was the only good thing happening for a while. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, where maybe you feel like your teaching is the only thing you have any sense of control over. And I'm just going to sit with that for about another beat, because I think verbalizing that for myself is even like, whoa. And pouring into that because you feel like this is the only thing. And anyway, so I think that's where a lot of these, how can I say it? The things that are bearing fruit now, that are, the harvests that are coming right now in my career, my classroom, and even creativity, launching Anchors and Aids, and that kind of just like exploding really, really fast for me, has all been from a place of, and can I just say, even the products that I've put out into the world are really from a place of, how can I as a teacher make learning not scary? How can I make being in the classroom with people that don't know each other? Because my students, I teach on a CTE campus. And so we bus kids from 5 campuses, and, these kids don't know each other. And they've just gone through this horrendous couple of years of learning. And what can I do to make this not scary, to make this seem easy, to take some of the terror out of all that school can be, especially for freshmen who you're coming into high school like after this nightmare experience, and that's where kind of it all pivoted and or evolved, whatever word you're going to use.
Yeah. There's so many things that you've said there that really strike me. One of them is really, I know the word trauma is used a lot, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm not, but I think we can all agree that the last couple of years, for lots of reasons, not just COVID, and you had your own personal things, but just the climate that is happening in many, many places, and what is happening in our country and around the world, like all everything. Of it. Yeah. There's a lot going on, and it is that connection between, I think, and again, maybe COVID was the trigger that made us start thinking about a lot of other things as having to do with social emotional learning, relationships and all of this, like you said, kind of getting to the basics and, kind of paring back to those most important things. I think maybe we all have experienced that, like, again, maybe COVID was the trigger that kind of collectively we've dealt with some of this. But again, I think like that understanding that our personal trauma and our personal things that we've gone through does affect our teaching, and those affect our students, right? We're not just little robots in classrooms, us giving information, them sucking up information. And of course, we've always known that. Of course, we accept those, sort of things. But I think to me, it's become much, much clearer of how important that is, because when you lose it and you lose those colleague relationships every day, and you lose that connection with your students through a screen and through disengagement, there is a lot of learning and growth I see in our profession, but also just in almost everybody, and just how we rethink our priorities and how we rethink what's important. So, recognizing what we all have gone through, recognizing what you've gone through, and then making that next step of how it had affected you in the past, and what you're doing about it, right, in the future. So, making that connection, I think, is what is really powerful from what I hear. So what are some things?
Let me just say this one thing. It was almost like COVID and virtual learning. We were looking through this microscope at how teaching, and anybody who's still doing professional learning and trying to hone their craft, you're looking at your teaching through this microscope, right? And then COVID, like threw on a lens that zoomed in further as to, okay, what are the things that really matter the most in our teaching, in our connecting with kids, and we had to deal with those first. Spanish right. is I wouldn't even say necessarily secondary in that situation, and so then I think that for me, I realized maybe that's how it is anyway. And maybe I'm overthinking things, and maybe I'm taking myself way too seriously. And
so again, like, we're going to go down a lot of side paths, right? Because again, like, one of the things that I've noticed in your Twitter feed is that you mentioned the word joy and fun a lot. And again, I think that's just very telling that, again, when you kind of deal with your, the things you're going through, and you start becoming your authentic self, you can feel vulnerable and brave to have fun in your classroom and with your students. And so I think that's really great. That seems to be one of the things I've noticed about what you're saying this year. So why don't you tell me a little bit, like what are some things that, we've talked about relationships and we can probably go there a little bit deeper, but what are some other things that have changed for you in the last few years or coming back to this year, like you said, that makes it feel different and feel special? What are some of your priorities that have maybe shifted?
One, I think, is, I'm going to give you one personal and one professional. And this is, I hope there's nobody out there who thinks, wow, she's being really cheesy or, whatever. Learning to like myself and be able to walk into a space with teenagers who are sometimes so brutal, even if they don't say a word, how they size you up and figure you out. That if you walk in and you don't feel like even if you're not confident about the content that you're teaching, that you're not confident just in your own skin, and that you believe that in yourself, and that you believe that you are really there to model that love for self and laugh at yourself and be a learner and be wrong and not be afraid to be wrong. How many times as teachers have we made the mistake with students, not because they were being, disobedient or anything, but because we were so afraid to look wrong in front of them that we became defensive or we became snarky when we didn't have to be, because we were insecure. And so that's one, is becoming more secure in myself, learning who I am, learning to enjoy myself, be proud of who I am, be proud of what I'm doing and those things. Because teenagers, middle schoolers and high schoolers, they're trying to figure out who they are. They are so busy trying to not let the world know that they don't have it all together. And I think that's because sometimes as adults, that's what we model to them, is that we have to have it together. Nobody can see us struggle. And it's a lie. Yeah. It's just all a lie. And I would rather them see me have to come back and apologize for making a mistake or dropping the ball on something, or maybe not handling an interaction with them as well as I could, because there's not enough adults in their lives that are apologizing to them and being humble, to them. And then the other thing, from a more professional point of view, and how I'm going about teaching, is more looking at, because I'm in a beautiful situation where I have super small classes. Like my biggest class right now is like 8. And the reason for that is I teach in a very dense area of our people who already speak Spanish. So I get the newbies, the kids who don't know Spanish, with the intention of teaching them Spanish that they can use at work. And so I did a lot of thinking about what do we talk about? And try to, not that thematic units are bad. I'm going to say some things that might be heretical to some people, but this is where I am. This is what I'm thinking about. And I'm not going to, I'll say that I'm nobody's researcher, a lot of the research that I have come in contact with is the same as every other teacher out there. That one article that you got in that really cool PD workshop that you had to read as a part of the workshop? Like, that's me too. It's not like I'm running out and got a subscription to, where you could get peer reviewed article. I don't have that. But what I see in my teaching is I'm thinking about, what do we talk about? What do kids like to talk about? And what do they not talk about? And so I'm trying to frame lessons around what we talk about, and what's happening is, and I was never, well, that's a lie. Back in the day, I was a grammarian, and I loved to conjugate verbs and all those things, right? But kids don't care about that. They just want to be able to say something cool in the language, right? So framing lessons around what kids like to talk about, and letting the vocabulary and structure reveal itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on something right now where instead of kind of centering some of the resources that I create around a certain language function or language feature, like the first person present tense, to be able to talk about what we do. Right now, I'm designing chat mats and things like that talk, like, let's talk about music. Let's just sit here at this table together and let's talk about music. And let me show you how to do that. And I just did one this morning about sports, and what do you like? What do you not like? What's your favorite team? And what do you play? And then, like, just inherently, just if you think about that, there's so many other directions that can go into that are natural language, like progressions. They're not these artificial learning progressions that we invent because we're so brainwashed by the structure of textbooks. Even me, like, and I've never used a textbook in my whole life to teach. But that structure, that inherent structure that we follow, and this topic needs to go with this thing. Well, no, it doesn't really, but trying to shape what I'm teaching in class around a natural conversation, and then level it a little bit so that not so much that I'm trying to hold my level 1 kids back or my level 2 kids back, but level 1, what I'm trying to do is show them in those conversations those basic interactions and sentence structure, and just by modeling, right? And let's get that down. Let's not go too crazy yet. If you want to know how to say something, ask, or let's find out. But then in level 2, more of, okay, now let's put some more bones into this so that we can pack some more meat onto this conversation and make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more deep, which is also how proficiency grows, right?
Right.
That going from novice to through intermediate it widens out. It's more about vocabulary and more about how much detail can you include, right? And less about how many tenses can you use and how many, time frames can you talk about. And so, so now in my teaching, my classroom is set up in a conference room style. I don't sit at the head of the table. I sit at the end of, in the middle of the table, and I've got my wireless keyboard and I've got my wireless mouse and I've got my smart screen over there, and we sit together and I do things with them. The first time they journaled in their folder kind of portfolio thing, I did it with them. I'm sitting right there writing with them. And then I can pick it up and turn it to them and say, this is what I want it to look like. And the reason why I want it to look like this is I'm teaching you how to write professionally in Spanish. This is not a text message, and then, then one of the most beautiful things is being able to turn to the kid next to me and like, elbow and make a little, side joke over here and, just grab their stuff, get them working. And it's just a different thing. And it's relaxed me. I don't have to feel like there's all this content I have to cover. It's got to be this and this and this and this. It's a conversation. And let's milk this conversation for as much as we can.
I love that. And I think part of what you said it's funny that you said your ideal circumstance because you only have 8 students. Because I remember seeing literally this last week on Twitter saying, "Oh my gosh, I only have 8 students. I don't know how to deal with that," right? Because a small class can be more challenging. But I think the big thing is, it's not about how many people you have or where you're sitting, because I think even like the sitting down next to them. Mm-hmm. Even though that's the physical representation of that, I hear that that's really the place that you're at, not physically as well, that you're trying to be in it with them, right? And so whether or not you have 30 students, it's not you standing, or 8, it's not you standing at the head, it's you modeling that sort of kind of flattened classroom, right? Where it's not hierarchical in that respect. And bringing in, like you said, what they want, that authentic language that they are. And of course, every teacher's situation is different, and where you're at and what support and scaffolds you need as a teacher. Like you said, you've been teaching 25 years, you feel comfortable, you know enough, you know what kind of things, you want to be able to create your own curriculum, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't want people to get distracted by, but I have to use a textbook, or I'm doing this, or I teach like this, that understanding that there's multiple paths to get to where we want to be. And no matter what path, you've got to bring them along with you, right? You have to, you're going together on that path. You can't drag them. You can't make anybody go down that path if they don't want to, right?
Yes. And, just on that very note right there, one of the things that I've talked about for a while, probably at least 10 years in workshops and sessions that I've presented and things like this, is I'm a basketball mom. My daughter played middle school, high school basketball, AAU basketball. My tailbone still aches. I make this joke a lot, but I'm telling you, last night I was on my patio and I sat a certain way, and that tailbone just had that reminder of those wood bleachers that I sat in. Oh my gosh, yes, because I sat in a lot of bleachers. Every weekend we were in a tournament. Something was going on with basketball. I've washed plenty of uniforms. What does that have to do with anything? I watched my daughter over the years that she played ball, do things that looked like she was punishing her body, but she would lace up those shoes and put on that gear, and we would go every single day that she had something going on with basketball, because she could see her own progress. She could feel it in her body. She could feel when she was doing well. She could feel that hot streak she would get in. And I make this joke too, like there's no more dedicated children in high school than band kids. And they go out there and they do things that I think are ridiculous. More power to you, babies. But nothing about marching on concrete in August sounds fun.
Right. Especially in Texas or in Florida, right? Where we are.
Yes. Even at 7:00 in the morning, there's nothing less fun in my mind than that. But those kids go out there and they do it and they love it and they're proud of themselves and they have fun and they build lifelong relationships. And so when I had that aha moment about, why kids do what they do extracurricularly, why they sign up for what they do, then I thought, I guess in our classes, if they don't feel that same progress, why invest? As adults, we do this all the time. If we don't see the weight coming off, we don't continue to do whatever it is. So I believe wholeheartedly in, they need to be able to see them getting better. They need to be able to understand, this is something that I do a lot in my class. I tell my students why we're about to do what we're going to do. I tell them purpose. I tell them what the result is going to be. And I also tell them that I'm never going to ask you to do anything that doesn't have a purpose, that doesn't have intention. And even when I leave sub work, so do your sub work when I'm not there. But But I think that my teaching early on was so packed with fluff because I didn't know what good instruction was at the time. And I didn't know what would yield results. And about halfway, well, was it halfway? Close to halfway in my career, I made a change and moved to this area and joined a team that I knew was doing cutting edge things, and I knew had pioneered a lot of really cool language instructional things in the state of Texas. And it's so deepened my understanding about language learning, and it's so deepened my learning about how to practice teaching that yielded results. So I say all of that to say this. If I hadn't gone through those things, if I hadn't gotten the training that I've gotten, if I hadn't worked under some of the people that I've worked under, been blessed to call my leaders and things, I wouldn't know what I know and be able to do what I can do sitting at a conference table with students and not be afraid of whatever, you know? But it's been really cool so far. I mean, I know we're only 2 weeks in, but yesterday it was kind of a weird day, and we're on block scheduling, and we alternate Fridays as A or B days. And so it was the week where we had 2 B days come in a row. And so we kind of wrapped up anything that we had loose, what am I trying to say? Loose ends that we had going on. And then I pulled out, I purchased these sets of like 10 sets of dice that you have 10 of, and we played Tinsy. If you don't know that game, it's brainless. There's no strategy. It's just a race to get all of your dice on the same number, kind of Yahtzee-like.
Okay.
So when you roll, you're like, everybody's trying to get all their dice to be ones. And the first one to get all the ones on all 10 of their dice at the same time, not at the same time, but they win, right? And so if you get a 1, you set it aside, like in Yahtzee, right? Get another 1, set it aside, keep rolling. So we're just racing. And, to see people, like, you can't mess up. This is a game where there's no mistakes, except maybe, throwing your dice across the table or something like that. And so there's no failure. Mm-hmm. And it's all
it's just fun. And it's just fun.
Yeah. And who wins and whatever. And just having fun together, and how much difference that makes when you play with them. Mm-hmm. And I learned that from Meredith White, my dear, dear friend, and somebody that I aspire to be like as a teacher, to watch her play with her students and put those things out there on Twitter and Instagram and whatever. I was like, I got to do that. But I couldn't do it until I was more secure in myself to sit down with them and just be stupid. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, that may not be everybody's favorite word, but just be silly and goofy and play.
So I love that, because I think sometimes we think, okay, I think sometimes we work too hard to connect. Like we're like, okay, it's the first week of school and we need to do like this, and this to make sure that we bond and form a community like in 3 days. Right. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen necessarily in 3 days. You can set the tone of whatever. And of course you want to be welcoming and do all this stuff, but you can't force a relationship. You can't, force the class to bond and to do these through, manufactured set of things to do, right? All of these things may lead to that community bonding, hopefully, right? But again, like just having some fun and laughing is a huge way to bond with human beings,
100%.
with other human beings, And so I love that. And I do have to say one thing that I've noticed on some, because I do want to talk about more of the activities and the more of the things that you've done to build your community, to meet those goals that you have for this year, especially building relationships and being authentic and letting your students be authentic. So I do want to get to some of those. But as a side note, I always think it's interesting because a lot of these examples and things that you're doing are things that I think are done in elementary schools, like in like world language teachers, elementary teachers in general. Like a lot of the just the way you approach things and some of the activities you've done really do remind me of a lot of those things that we do to build community in the lower levels. And then for some reason we go, they're in middle school now. They're a teenager now. And we're not going to have
Gotta
fun.
get them ready for
college.
Yes,
exactly. We're pushing towards this goal. And again, like just that slowing things down and allowing the community to happen, allowing those, the circumstances for those relationships to be built, I think is really powerful. And it's just me watching and looking at Twitter and lurking and seeing what you're doing. But a lot of those things, for example, the putting together of their Spanish folder, you talked about how you did that with them. And how you modeled it. And you even mentioned it seemed like a craft activity in elementary school. But again, it's an experience, right? That is it's not like all in their heads. It's an actual physical experience that they're doing and you're all doing it together, right? And tell me a little bit more about some of the things you're doing as far as some activities, some, just some practical things, that you're producing or that you're doing to kind of set the stage for your students and for you to, really become connected.
Trying my best, like I said, to model being a learner and to model resourcefulness and to, in everything that I do. Okay, let me give you a concrete example. My students, most of them, I found out this week that they don't have any idea how to use an email platform. Not even like to check their email and see messages, but like, where do I write an email?
It's not their reality, right?
No.
At this point in time. Yeah.
And yet it should be, because I can't think of a single person that doesn't have to interact with on email with their work. And I work at a career text, and center. And I'm like, this is work. Like, I'm going to show them how to work. And so, loving that I can have my keyboard here, pull my email account up on the screen. And so what we did was we co-authored an introductory email as if I was a student to my teacher, Senora Lenord. And we talked about all the spots of the email window and all the things and what does CC mean and why you don't need it right now or when would you need it. And so I want to pause and say this because we language teachers, we love our languages and we take ourselves way seriously. I love that Florencia put out recently this week about that quote about target language use and thinking about when to use L1 and when to use L2 and the danger of this and the, whatever. Such a good discussion because there are things, especially in the lower level classes, that you cannot do in the target language and still build trust in the same way that you can in L1. I'm going to, at least I have not found it. I know that there are people out there who will argue with me that I build great relationships and I only speak Spanish to my kids. Good for you. Yay. I'm happy for you. I really genuinely am. I'm not being snarky. I just have found that there are moments in my classroom where if I throw a layer of a second language on there, it deteriorates my impact. And it makes things harder and it makes me less approachable. And so I don't fear the use of L1 for purposeful reasons. Sometimes that is going to be relationship building. Sometimes it's going to be, and we all do it, playing the role of mom or dad when we have a young lady who needs help with, I don't know, maybe she broke a nail or
who knows what, right?
Whatever it is,
whatever's
right?
important to them, right?
Yes. Or when they need food. And I really do believe this, especially when the relationships are new and they're in those lower levels, to make them have to perform for basic human needs. I don't know if I'm a fan because this person, like if this young lady needs to run to the bathroom for whatever reason, and now I'm making her ask me in Spanish, I may be prolonging and causing a bigger problem by that. So I'm, and also instructions in Spanish, I'm not a big fan of them, especially first and second year, because I don't want the interpretive activity to be what are the instructions.
Right.
I want the task that I have planned for you to be the thing you gain. Like if you had a new exercise machine and you had to read the, instructions for how to use it in another language, probably it's going to make you not want to use the machine.
Yeah. Or you're going to use it incorrectly, or you're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to have not a pleasant experience, right? Whether or not, whatever reason, right?
And too many people have gone through language classes and haven't gotten a good experience from it. And that's part of the reason why is we're adding difficulty, not rigor. And those two things are different.
Oh, I feel so strongly about that too. Yes, 100%. Yes. I've done lots of presentations and research on rigor versus difficulty and how we don't understand what that means, right? That's a whole nother podcast we could talk about.
It really is. But go ahead.
What I really love though, what I think I would love the listeners to take away from this is not like Amy and Michelle's opinion on target language, right?
Yes.
What I would like them to take away from this is if you're going to use a target language or whatever the decision you're making, be intentional. Like why? Like again, like Amy, why don't you like using directions? And you told me exactly why, because it doesn't meet your goals and your priorities for your students in this particular circumstance, right? And I think that is what I really love that you're modeling, is that intention, whatever that is. What is the intention? Why? What is your goal? What are you trying to what do you want students to understand? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to know? All of those things. And then, again, obviously there's bounds. That doesn't mean speaking English the entire class period, because what would the intention and the goal be behind that? Right. Now, I'm not saying there's never a reason, right? But in general, within those boundaries, we have to, give ourselves permission to make the intentional decisions and choices that we know are best for our students that are sitting in that room at that period of time, not some random unknown, some random students that, aren't the ones in front of you. Right. And so I really appreciate you sharing not just your ideas about something, but why you feel that way. And I think that's something that is really helpful to other teachers.
Well, and as you were saying that, I was just thinking about, even how sometimes we structure practice that we hear, like when we teach our lessons, we do it 5 and 7 times a day, right? We're teaching those levels and it feels so redundant to us. And sometimes what happens even within a school day is you feel like, okay, first period, you're like, okay, let's really get into these repetitions of things, and then by 7th period, like, oh my gosh, if I have to do this one more time, I'm going to, pull all my hair out. But thinking a lot about how the repetition that we are trying to achieve, and I'm not talking about like boring them to death, but I'm talking about just like sports, the reps that they need to build that skill and move that knowledge and ability into long-term memory and acquire, right?
Yeah.
That I think we almost always, no, let me say this another way. I think that one of my goals this year is to pay attention to, have they had enough repetition? Do they feel confident right now yet? And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm asking them those things. I'm changing how I ask them, how are you doing? Do you understand? Do you feel confident? And asking them now, how confident do you feel like doing this, or how confident do you feel doing this on your own without looking? And I'm also training students to okay, let's use the chat mat. Let's use whatever it is that we're doing. Let's use the screen, whatever it is that you're pulling language from. And now this time, what I want you to do is, right now, we can't print anything in my school because we got new printers, but for some reason we don't have the ink to go to the printers right now. So everything is digital for me. It's all paperless pretty much. And so I put resources on Google Classroom, and they can still see them. They can zoom in, which is almost smarter in a way because, there are kids that need glasses who don't have glasses. Stuff like that. Anyway, use the resource however you need to for the initial tasks, right? Now today, what I want you to do is we're gonna write again. We're gonna write the same stuff we wrote yesterday, but this time, Pac-Man your computer. So that means and where you can't really see the resources there. It's there, but you can't really see it. First time, first pass. Do this without looking. If you don't remember how to say something, draw a blank and keep going. Okay? Because we all forget words in real life in English all the time. Keep going. When you're done with everything that you can do yourself, pull that screen back up and look and see, where are your gaps. Be aware of your gaps so that you know what to target, and what will also happen in your brain is now that makes that gap a need you need to fill. And if you create that need, your brain will it's soaking it in. And I talked to them about that. I couldn't talk to them about that in L2. Right. There's no way. It would be like, then I would get that parent phone call why are you speaking so much, Spanish in class? No,
it's not comprehensible at all to them at this point. Right.
And that's another thing. I'm glad you said that because I have a situation that I want to be careful how I say this because I want to honor the person in the situation that it kind of made me think about this, that are we sure we're being comprehensible when we think we're using comprehensible input? And that I think now we've got, as a profession, we're starting to get more and more, people who've converted to the whole idea of teaching with comprehensible input, using target language instruction, all those kinds of things, right? And but who's showing us how to be comprehensible? Where's that workshop? Where's that session? And I know there have been people out there who've done those things, but listening to or getting to observe teachers who, they're trying to teach and get kids excited about using language, but they don't know how to make it comprehensible and use the target language to model. And so I've been thinking about my own, use of comprehensible input and, making sure that it's comprehensible. How am I doing that? Am I sure that it's comprehensible? Because my goal is, when I'm presenting new input to kids, is you tell me what you see. You tell me what you understand. I'm not going to tell you. I mean, like that defeats the purpose of making you look at it, right? Listen to it, read it. And I will redirect you if I feel like I'll draw a picture, like what we do, right? But not everybody out there knows how to do that. They want to know. They're like, why is this not working? And
because it's hard.
It's hard. It's exhausting.
It's so funny because when I worked with a lot of native Spanish speakers, and of course their Spanish is perfect. It's beautiful. But it was very hard for them to simplify and to, stay, because again, in English, you can say something 4 different ways. And in a conversation, you want variety. We're not going to just repeat the same. It's not natural to repeat the same format sort of thing. We're going to say, it in different terms. And so to get those repetitions of those, different, whatever it might be, it was really hard for them. And then I said, okay, let me model it in English. And oh my gosh, it was so hard. It was so hard for me to do, to make my English comprehensible. And I think that's something that, I needed that reality check again of course it's comprehensible to me. I know Spanish and I know English, right? So it makes sense to me, of course. And I think I'm making it comprehensible in lots of ways. But I think once you experience it, I love the presenters, and I wish we struggle with this a lot as somebody who presents on the topic of target language and making it comprehensible, like giving teachers that experience of listening to a language they don't teach, don't know, not a Romance language. Because again, if I'm getting an example in French, I can figure some stuff out, right? Based on whatever, or German, based on my English, I can figure a lot of stuff out. So, when you get that experience of not understanding, not knowing, and then having to, one of the things I learned when I took an ASL class, because I wanted to both learn it. I worked with deaf teachers. I wanted to have that experience with them, but I also just wanted to feel what it was like to be a completely novice learner of a language, right? And one thing I did find out about myself is I fake it a lot. And students are going to fake it a lot too. So even when you're doing comprehension checks and you're asking maybe, like just the response of ask yes, no questions, and then either or questions, a lot of times you can guess pretty good, based on some things. And so the point is, it's not easy to do that, to make it comprehensible, to do those comprehension checks, to do all that stuff. And to not make it too easy by just translating things every time there's a confused look. Like there's a lot that goes into it. So, it was funny because that we go back to that post that Florencia put about 90% and it being dangerous. And I thought, oh, dangerous. I mean, it's a dangerous. That's a really strong, but the more I think about it, it implies that it's easy to just do 90% target language. Like just do it, right?
And what was our first,
you know the language, right?
And what was our first interpretation of that we had to be speaking the language 90% of the time. And that's not what that means.
Right.
Right. And I know for years that was so much pressure on me and it exhausting and
if you don't have the skills and you don't know the strategies and how to do it, if you're not at that place where you can do it seamlessly and effectively, it can be very stressful and anxiety producing, right? So I'm like, well, maybe dangerous isn't the worst word, in a different respect, right? I mean, using it in a different way.
One of the things that I'm doing also that is different this year, and it's kind of it's there. I don't have everything planned out. That's a side note. Other thing that I'm doing is not necessarily, I'm kind of making this up a little bit as I go a little bit. Cause I kind of can right now. I hate to say that out loud because I don't want it to sound irreverent. I plan. I do. I just don't plan all the things that I used to, and I don't plan them in the same way. So here's one of those things. I have decided, since I have such small classes, that I'm going to tell students what all of the assignments and assessments are going to be, exactly what they're going to have to do before, I'm making a list of it for this unit, and I'm going to hand this piece of paper to them and say, put this in your folder. This is everything, every grade that we're going to take this grading period and what you're going to have to do to be successful. Okay. And so right now we're getting ready this coming week to take their first speaking assessment in the third week of school, which kind of is wild to me. I've never had a speaking assessment the third week of school. But we've been working on introducing ourselves. And if any of you have gotten the Hola chat mat or the Hello chat mat, that it just talks about, introducing themselves, telling their age, their grade, where they go to school, where they live, and where they're from. And that's all. That what I see right now is it's changing, one, how they come at what we do in class. like you can see like, oh, I have to be able to do this. And you can just see it in their demeanor that they're like, and they asked me, can we have just some practice time? And that's what I was kind of referring to. And I think I got sidetracked, but Friday I gave them a 30-minute block. I need this assignment turned in today. And whatever time you have remaining, you can go practice for your speaking assessment next week. And they did. I had kids, some of them went and sat on the beanbag and some of them were in the corner and they were just like rehearsing and they Pac-Man their computers on their own. And I was just like, they're learning how to quiz themselves in the right ways. But what it also does when they know what the assessment is going to be and they know they have to perform, and we've talked about this, we've heard this, is it's making how I get them to practice different, because I don't want just a memorization of some words that they mumble out loud, right? So I'm having to be much more deliberate about how am I practicing with them, and how do I make sure that they can't anticipate what I'm going to ask them to say, so that they don't have to think about what am I saying. And I'm talking about themselves. Like right now I'm saying my age. So one of the ways that we did this week was, the classtools.net, they've got that roulette wheel kind of thing. Yeah. So on that chat mat, it has the titles in the target language, my introduction, my age, my school. So all those are in the target language, right? So I put those as the categories on the wheel in the target language. So now we have to know what mi edad means. Mi escuela means mi origen, mi ciudad. So my level 1 students already know what the word city is. They already know what school is, and we haven't done a school unit. Right. And what I love about that is that's what I'm talking about now this introduction thing. The language that they know is natural and it's organic and it's actually authentic to what they would need to say in this moment, right? And so when that word, when that title comes up and it says mi escuela, they know that I want them to tell me where they go to school, and it's just changed how I look at how we practice, and then we, they had to speak them, and they got whiteboards and they wrote them, and I have a couple of kids in the room who are native speakers, and what they need the most is they need to see the structure, see the spelling, see the punctuation. And so now this particular lesson, I know you know how to say it, but now let's focus in on how do you write it? How do you read it and know what you're saying? And so it's allowing me to learn how to practice with them very much differently. So I'm going to flip that on its head next week, and they're going to have to listen to me make statements, and then they have to hold up a card that shows me what am I saying, and give them those same titles from the chat mat, because that and training them that language is important too. It's not just the stuff that you say about yourself, but all these other words, these are important too.
Yeah, because you can't have a conversation if you only know the words that pertain to you, right? You have to know the ones that pertain to somebody else as well. I love that. There was one other example that I wanted you to talk about a little bit, and we're kind of going back to that building community and having relationships. But one of the things that I personally love is I'm obsessed with like the Clifton Gallup Strengths Finder, and talking about strengths and what you bring to a shared space, right? And I think both teachers and students need to really, we always focus on what we're not good at, right? I mean, I can list it, I could start a list and not stop for a very long time of all the things I need to work on, all the weaknesses I have, all the insecurities, all that stuff, right? And our students are the same way, what they're not good at. I'm not good at meeting people. I'm not good at chit chat. I'm not good, like we are always, maybe it's human nature, focused on those weaknesses in that. And I loved, I think, what did you call it? Class assets, that class assets sheet, because again, asset strengths, what do you bring? There was that one that I saw on Twitter. And I also tell us a little bit too about the Google form activity that you did, where they listed their characteristics and then you did like an autocrat and gave it to them, I believe was that your activity as well?
Okay. So let's start with class assets. Really what I was wanting to do with that was I wanted them to, I made a list of things that I knew that we were going to probably use in class, skills. And I knew that these kiddos, excuse me, didn't necessarily know each other and often don't find out how their classmates can benefit them and their groups and their learning until like January, or, like when they finally start to interact with each other. Right. And I also kind of knew that, well, I was watching them over the first couple of days and I was like, they don't want to talk to anybody. They barely want to talk to me. They don't want to talk to that weird teenager across the table. How can I force their hand and make them talk to each other in a way that isn't just like adults, a frivolous icebreaker?
And artificial, right?
Yeah. Icebreakers have their place, but just, I don't know if anybody's heard this before, but I'm a big believer in what they call grounding exercises, which is an icebreaker type activity, but that is connected to the work and then helps the work happen. So I took the whole human bingo thing and I took out, the fun, light stuff. And I said, okay, who knows how to draw? Who knows how to handwrite well? Like your handwriting is nice. Who knows Canva? Because there's some teachers who are starting to really use it as a go-to tool for class, products, right? And just all these things, right? And now here's this piece of paper. Everybody's got one. I'm going to model how I want you to go about it because, again, even though they're in high school, middle school, we cannot assume that they know how to self-direct, have a conversation, be polite to each other, speak loud enough to be heard, all these things, right? And so this is what I want to happen. So I turned to one of the students and I said, hey, Tom, do you know how to draw well? Or who knows how to draw well? And so, somebody raised their hand, like, I'm pretty good at drawing. And so then I said, okay, now everybody look, Susie said she can draw well. So everybody under drawing, write Susie's name. So when I ask you to do something as a team, you know who your artist is, right? And you're not being asked to do something that's not in your wheelhouse. And using even professional terms like that, like talking to them like a professional, right? And so do you understand what I need you to do here, right? I want you to find out who in the room can do this. And then I said, because y'all need to talk to each other and I'm not going to be in this conversation. I'm going to go over here and take roll. And I said, you got it. And it was really, really like kind of sketchy at first, but then after a while they started writing things in. And I was like, I have this little cubby area in my classroom where I put my desk. So the classroom is our space. That is my space. And so I went over there and they're finally kind of taken off. And does anybody know how to use Canva? No. Hey guys, you can put me down for that. I'm good at Canva. And made myself an asset in that way. Or, hey, I'm pretty good at computer and Google stuff. You can write me down for that. And so they're writing down my name, and they're having to ask each other, how do you spell your name? And I'm like, we need this ice to break so that when we get into Spanish, they're not so afraid to talk to each other. And also, this is a professional skill to be able to talk and collaborate. And this is what collaboration looks like. It's not, hey, you do it. It's, we do it together. Right. And so, there was a lot of intention that went behind that, for such a simple thing. Right.
Yeah.
But also getting out of the way, because just going back to basketball analogies, the coach rarely gets on the court and does things with them. He or she may model,
there, right.
Or give feedback or something like that. Or coach, like, let me show you how to do this a little bit more easily. And then they get off the court again and let them go. And so trying to do that a little bit more, and not need to control everything all the time. Which seems...
and focusing everybody on everybody else's strengths. I think that's a great way to, again, put an environment of being safe, and that everybody's good at something. And I'm sure everybody had some sort of spot on there, and they find their niche, right? They find their kind of role. But I really did. I love that activity. So I thought,
great. I'd never done it before, and I'm like, this has been missing. This has been a real missing component, because now it also starts to make them curious about each other. Mm-hmm. And you can't learn a language well without having somebody to talk to. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, how can I get them to start to move past that? And do you know what happened after that activity? They started offering to help each other with other things.
That's great.
And I have goosebumps talking about it. I wish I could. It's not been big, huge breakthroughs. It's been these little things that, I don't know. It's just been kind of beautiful. And so you asked me about, what was the other thing? The autocrat thing.
Yeah. I was just curious about that, because I thought that was sounded very intriguing as well.
I haven't done this yet. It's just kind of an idea that I have. Mm-hmm. Catherine, I'm going to say her last name wrong. Oslin?
Yep.
Okay. I love her to death. She's my friend, but I never say her name right.
I think it's
Catherine.
Oslin.
I love you. Please don't be mad at me for saying your name wrong.
If we're butchering your name, right?
Yeah. She was the one who taught me how to use Autocrat and Google Forms and all the things to then generate a certificate or generate an email or whatever. That was like a mail merge kind of thing, but for different purposes, right? And so I have so few students this year. This will be easier, but have them fill out a Google form, like as they're initially working through things that relate to their identity. Mm-hmm. And then almost kind of like an electronic Mad Lib kind of thing. Then have Autocrat take all that information and then craft like a positive affirmation about themselves that is printed, and then they can read a story, about themselves. And because, going back to what we first started this conversation talking about, I'm different because I've learned how to love me. And even beyond that, to like who I am, like my sense of humor, like what I like, and not apologize for it anymore, Mm-hmm. And I really, really want to do some things where I model how, man, you're really cool. And I want you to, just let them know, show them how to love themselves. I have this one student who, bless his heart, he came to school his first day. And then he was MIA for a couple of days. And I just found out that the reason why is because he's super, super embarrassed about the haircut he got. Oh. And he wears a hoodie and a mask and glasses. So he's like this little ninja in my class. I may tell him that. I may just be like, you're the class ninja. So if anything goes down, we're totally expecting you to protect us, right? And
that's funny.
And anyway, so it's like he's this challenge for me. And so Friday when we're playing Tenzi, the dice game, I got him to laugh, and it was the highlight of my day, getting him to laugh, because he was just like, he didn't want any attention drawn to him. And like, the problem with that is we only have 5 people in the room. So you can't hide. Like, nobody can hide. So, and just, we laugh together, and, just, I don't know, like there's no formula. I haven't taken a class or anything. It's just trying to take the awkward out of having to work so closely with them, and to be human with them, and let them know that there's at least one adult in their life that just wants them to know how to love themselves, period.
Wow. That's awesome. That's a great place to end this conversation, isn't it? Because I don't know, that is a great place to just kind of sit there with that, right? And being that person that models that, and that can be that for those students. I think that's wonderful. It has been just such a pleasure talking with you. I feel like we could spend most of our Sunday just, going down little side sort of tangents and rabbit holes, but it has been a lovely conversation. And I do appreciate you, and I do appreciate what you're putting out there in the world. Not even just, like I said, not even just the products that you do to support teachers and students, although those are amazing, but just how you're modeling your own growth. And again, after 25 years teaching, saying, I was there, and that was great. And now I'm here, and we're trying this, and, and taking those risks, and, really being vulnerable, and, both with your students, but also with your colleagues. And that's not easy to do. And I think it's something that we all kind of can learn a lot from.
Can I give a little bit of a shout out?
Yes, please.
So this shout out is to anybody I've ever taught or worked with, that if you met me at a stage of my life where before this year, thank you for what you taught me to get me to this place, because it's a good place. And I'm so grateful for the lessons that I got to learn from being your teacher or being your colleague. And, you made me better, all the good, all the tough, all the challenging, whatever it is. I'm so thankful. And even the toughest things, just like shining up a diamond, you gotta get something rough to make a diamond shine. And I appreciate that so much. And to you, Michelle, I'm so honored that you asked me to do this. This was so much fun. I didn't realize how much fun it would be. I was kind of nervous about it. But this is great. And what you're doing to, just amplify voices and highlight, oh gosh, so many things, not even just language teaching, but just, love of learning and professional growth. And you're doing great work. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. It is really, really fun. It's really fun.
I bet.
And it is like just talking every week or every couple of weeks with amazing people like you. I'm blessed to be able to do it. So
but also, how cool is it that Twitter brought this to us? Because I think all of these things are like Lang Chat and Twitter. Like, gosh, what a blessing.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, you get, so we could start up a whole nother conversation
right after we rewind.
No, but it's so true. Like, what I love about it is there's a tiny snippet, and you can tell so much about a person from that snippet. And then I get the chance to dig into that a little bit more, and to, expand on that for, let other people hear all the thoughts behind it and all the stuff behind it. And it is a blast. I do absolutely. I'm cold calling people on Twitter all the time, where I'm like, hey, remember me? You want to chat? So thank you for taking up the challenge. And even though we met, I don't know, it's been quite a few years now, way back at a Tell collab in Austin, I think, was the first time I met you in person. And we've both come a long way since then, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's been a pleasure, though. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.